What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Claims Podcast. I'm here with Adrian Guttridge, insurance executive, tech savant, and overall great guy. Adrian, thanks so much for being on.
You're welcome, Matt. Great to see you again.
So, Adrian, for those who don't know you and those who want to learn a little bit more about you, would you mind sharing with the listeners and viewers a little bit more about your background, how you got into insurance, where you are today?
Yeah, sure. So, over 35 years in business. Actually, I'm a computer scientist by background, so I started my career as a developer. And then actually it was Accenture that first put me into insurance when I worked at Prudential in the UK on an outsourcing assignment we had there, and worked in and around insurance and banking ever since. And then in 2012, I became exec director for Exchanging, looking after their insurance business. And Exchanging in the UK look after all of the London markets, policy admin, claims processing. So I've been doing that. And then I've just spent 2 years in Singapore around startups, so setting up technology startups and mentoring those. And back in London again, even during this COVID crisis, and now working for WNS, which is a large business process management company.
Interesting.
And focused again on the Lloyd's and London markets.
Interesting. To jump into that or double click on that a little bit further, what does that mean, business process or outsourcing, in the context of insurance? What is an example, feature, or key task?
Yeah, typically you're talking about some of the middle and back office processing. So policy administration, claims processing, finance and accounting, analytics. So it tends to be those sorts of areas.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And how has that been affected by everything that's going on today with COVID? Is it slow? Is it picked up? What's the general change in trend that you felt in this business as a result of what's going on?
Yeah, well, the biggest impact actually through COVID has been the fact that people have been working from home. And of course, Lloyd's of London has always been a very face-to-face market, where brokers go into the underwriting floor at Lloyd's in Lime Street and meet with the underwriters, and that's where they close their business. Now, with COVID, actually the underwriting floor closed down for the first time in its history. And so people have been working from home and doing that business interface. Fortunately, there has been IT in place that allows people to do that intersection. And so that's really taken off, which is fantastic, because actually COVID has done more probably to do digital transformation in the specialty insurance marketplace than anything we've seen for years, because it's forced people to work from home. As I say, because traditionally it has been a very face-to-face marketplace.
Right. And are you using technology in what you're doing today? And if so, could you share what it looks like in terms of both internally and what you're kind of offering to clients?
Yeah, sure. So, for us, we're agnostic about which technology platform we would use. So we look at efficiencies of processing. We have some capabilities, particularly around analytics, that are unique to us. But yes, I mean, everything that you look at, when you start to look at the insurance markets, it's about how do you get fewer human interactions in that whole insurance supply chain. That's really what we're looking at. So straight through processing, capturing data, a full set of data early on through that broker customer interface, and passing that all the way through the value chain. And that is key, to everything. So that's what we're doing.
Is there anything on the cutting edge side of things that you see kind of taking hold in what you do, either in terms of how you're processing those claims or how you're running the team internally? So, for example, in our business, we're just starting to look at predictive data analytics in terms of being able to say to a client, this claim's going to take on average this much time, this much money, it's this likely to settle, those kind of things. Is that something that you find prevalent in your business, either data analytics or otherwise?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, giving our clients that insight into their business based on the data they have, making some predictions using AI as well to help them to really predict what might happen. What lines of business should they actually not be writing at all? Okay.
Right.
Which lines of business should they actually accelerate and do more of? Because actually that's generating raised profitability. Of course, one of the issues with that is, are you doing all of your expense allocations to the right places in the first place? Okay, because you can only look at profitability by product if you've been able to dissect your business and cut up the costs into those areas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's funny because in the fund world, we see allocation a lot, and this is one of the first times I've heard it in the context of insurance. So it's good to know that it's also relevant in this context. And it sounds like it's something that you guys specialize in or offer as a key differentiator.
Yes.
Or is okay.
Yeah, it is. And you think of many of our clients who may be writing marine or energy or aviation as lines of business. Well, they may have an overall cost income ratio, but what does it look across each of those particular product lines? And can you, make decisions based on the back of that? So that sort of insight and analytics is very useful indeed.
Do you see any consistent trends in that? Does it tend to be once they switch on WNS, they find that they're turning off their automotive product line or anything like that?
It's never quite as simple as that, actually.
Got it.
But
well,
one of the key things I think, as I said before, though, is are you capturing the right data in the first place, and how are you, doing the allocation so that when you do the reporting, the insights, that you're getting that correct. That's key.
Yeah, that makes sense. And kind of what key metrics are you looking at, I suppose, when you're servicing these clients? Is there anything that you're kind of targeting as an improvement? You mentioned kind of profit loss ratios there. Is there anything else in that bucket?
Look, the typical ones, in insurance, cost income ratio is a key one. Now, obviously, the gross written premium and what's happening around that, is that rising or falling? That's key as well. So you tend to look at some of those as the key drivers. And if you're finding a particular line of business, looking at, well, what catastrophes, what losses have happened, and how expensive has that been for the business? Right. And is that something where you look at forward then at the predictability of that? Is that somewhere you want to stay? Does capital, you want to still put capital into that particular stream, that business line, or do you want to move away into another one?
Yeah, the premium side of things is kind of interesting. I've been trying to think of companies, and there are some that do it in the form of marketplaces, but companies that have done a good job of trying to grow that and folks that kind of focus on that. Obviously, insurance is a regulated industry, so it's kind of constrictive in terms of what you can actually do. But have you seen anything in terms of companies, either startups or established players, including yourself, do something in terms of improving gross written premiums that you found innovative or just stood out to you as something that you typically try to use with your clients? So that could be anything from getting them listed or their premiums on a marketplace to new tech, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is a series of new startups coming to the market. In Lloyd's and London markets, we're seeing, Convex in the underwriting side, McGill and Partners in the broking side. And then, of course, for the future at Lloyd's, if you look at that blueprint and the whole concept of syndicate in a box, which is the idea of promoting new syndicates to come through in a much leaner way with less drag in terms of oversight. To help generate that. I think those are really good trends that we've seen happening. And then, of course, a lot of insurtech companies as well coming along too, in helping to support some of that.
Right. So what's a typical customer for WNS, and what's the value prop that WNS is bringing to the table as a service provider?
Yeah, it's interesting. We can do some very large business process outsourcing, and we do for some of the large insurance players globally, policy admin and claims, but also at the smaller end, doing just something niche around an actuarial service or analytics, as a one-off project. So actually, there's quite a wide range, in fact. So in many ways, I'd say no project is too small in that sense.
Interesting. Does it seem to be the case that technology is actually being implemented in this kind of space, or is it still a relatively manually driven area, you think?
No, there is technology. I think it's all about adoption, and that's always been an issue. I think there's always been a degree of technology available, but because the way that the market has grown up, and as I said at the beginning, it's always been a very face-to-face market, then I think there's been less behavioral change from some of the people in the market to adopt that technology. And I think that's been one of the barriers. And that's why, you know, I mentioned COVID at the beginning. It's been quite a big influence on the adoption of technology in the marketplace. It's been very interesting, actually.
That's true. That is true. It feels like it's accelerated a lot of these kind of remote, especially the working from home trends by a good few years. Curious if you see any other sides of tech that have been, their usage is kind of upticked as a result of everything that's going on. Like remote tools, obviously, I think we talked briefly before starting this about Teams and obviously this tool we're recording this on Zoom is a great tool. But anything else that you've seen a kind of an uptick on either internally or externally as a result of this remote trend?
I think for this, it's more than just working from home. I think it's the way that work is done. That before a lot was done on paper still, large contracts, being taken around the market. And what you're seeing is electronic documents being used much more because they have to be, because people aren't meeting face to face anymore. So I think it's that. So it's more than just work from home. In fact, it's the whole way in which business has been transacted between brokers and underwriters has been impacted. So probably you've seen, you know, a bigger impact in many ways in this area of insurance than many other businesses that may already have been transacting electronically. But the thing is now they just happen to be working from home. Well, this is different. This has forced the electronic working. That's the key difference.
Right. Yeah, I'm curious to see if it makes things more or less efficient. It feels like it's so early on. The data may not quite be as voluminous as we need to have a meaningful comparison to what we had before, which is pretty much the entirety of work before this pandemic. But would be interested to see if this accelerated shift towards both remote work and just, to your point, other tools that relate to doing things digitally. So things like DocuSign and HelloSign are in that virtual document side of things. I've also seen contract relationship management tools do pretty well as well in terms of contract lifecycle management. I've seen quite a few of these horizontal, I suppose you call them productivity tools, do reasonably well as a result of all this and start to see an uptick. So I'm not sure which we use beyond Zoom, Teams, and DocuSign, but I think we're definitely considering things like, you know, Rippling and HR software as an example, contract lifecycle management software, things like that. So definitely it's caused us to look across the board at everything that we have as a tech stack and consider other things that are out there. So we'll be interested to see.
Yes, and that whole area, you know, digital transformation takes on many forms and can cover many parts of your whole end-to-end value chain.
Right.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Right. So, Adrian, for those who want to find out more about what you're doing at WNS or want to find out more about you personally, how would someone get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way initially. So connect with me on LinkedIn, you know, and just message me there, and I'll reply. Okay,
wonderful. So we'll share that in the show notes. We'll share a link to your profile, and hopefully folks can get in touch and learn more about what you're doing in the business process outsourcing space for insurance. Sounds like there's a lot of industries, a lot of policy lines, a lot of things you guys are doing. So it probably makes sense to offer some resources there for people to dig in if they're interested to find out more. And any parting thoughts before I wrap it up? And hopefully this is one of many with you. Just wanted to whet people's appetites and want them coming back for more. So any parting thoughts?
Well, I just want to be interested to see what happens next, actually. So, for example, for Lloyd's, the underwriting floor is due to open in September. And what will that look like? What will the footprint be? Will it return to what it was before, or will people decide that actually they like the electronic working and that's how business is going to be conducted? It's going to be quite fascinating, I think.
Right. Most certainly agree. So this has been Adrian Guttridge, insurance executive, great guy, international whiz and overall friend. So I appreciate the time, Adrian. We'll share all the notes in the show description so people can get in touch with you and find out more about what you're doing. But real pleasure to have you on, hopefully one of many, and thanks for your time.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Adrian.